In this video, I'm really excited to introduce you to Nic Dean, who's the amazing motion designer behind the YouTube channel Mograph Mindset, where I've learned all kinds of stuff about expressions and mogurts and text boxes. He's just made some really high quality tutorials over there. Go subscribe if you're not already. But in this conversation, we're gonna talk about his career, how he's gotten into making his own tools, going from scripts to even some plugins, collaborating with other developers, and now releasing a brand new tool for Premiere Pro, an extension called Captioneer. We're gonna talk about that near the end of the conversation, but it's an incredible looking tool for making captions directly in Premiere based on audio transcriptions and applying them to your sequence through mogurts, meaning you can create custom mogurts and apply them through Captioneer and still have full editability after they've been added to your sequence. It's a new take on how to do these kinds of captions inside of Premiere, and I think you're gonna really like it. So like I said, that's gonna be at the end of the conversation, so if you're interested in just that and hearing more about it, feel free to use the chapters and skip to that section. But I just hope that you enjoy this conversation with Nic Dean and that you can get to know him a little bit with me. Be sure to share some love down in the comments for Nic, and go subscribe to Mograph Mindset and enjoy our conversation. Well, Nic, thanks so much for being on the channel. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you, finally get to see your face and show everyone on my channel who you are and just talk about what you've been contributing to the communities. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's fun to be here. I'm excited to finally do one of these interviews and get out there a little more. And it's really exciting to be, on your channel. Like, you've done a lot to contribute to the community. So I figured it would be a fun place to have a conversation.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't we just start with a little bit of background for anybody who's watching who might not know who you are, just like who you are, where you're from, and what kind of stuff you're doing right now.
Yeah, so my name is Nic Dean. I'm a motion designer. I've done a lot of different things in my career. I started out as an editor, got heavy into After Effects, and did more motion design predominantly for the last 5 years. Now I make mogurts. I have a YouTube channel, and sometimes I make tools for After Effects and Premiere. I'm in California right now. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area,
right?
Which is a mouthful to say. I'm originally from Los Angeles, so
Okay.
I grew up down there, and then I went to the East Coast for college. And after college, I went back to the West Coast, and then I went back to the East Coast and worked there. And now I'm back on the West Coast for a little bit, while I was working on some recent projects.
Nice. So you're just bouncing back and forth from one side of the country to the other. Awesome. Yeah. So what got you interested in motion design in the first place and video editing? Because you started as a video editor.
Yeah. So I've been editing for a long time. I'm 30, and I first got into it in high school. I think I was 14 or 15. And as a kid in high school, what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a bunch of video game montages. And so this is something that's become really popular now. And, when I was in high school, YouTube was first starting, and there were these like videos that people were cutting together. And so as a kid, I actually wanted to do that. And so I started learning how to edit to make my own videos. You can't find them online, so don't try. But that was my earliest introduction. And so I was using this very janky software called Pinnacle, which was, this tool?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think it was made by Avid, but it was like a super bare bones, like
Right.
iMovie or even less like version.
Mm-hmm.
And it came with like a capturing device to record the screen and stuff. And so that was the first thing that I used.
Yeah.
And I remember actually, like, to apply effects to clips, there was no concept of keyframes,
Right.
but there were like different effects that you could add. And so my earliest introduction to like keyframing and adding effects was literally cutting 1 or 2 frames, adding an effect, changing the value, cutting the next 2.
Wow.
And so I was doing that because I didn't know any better, right? I'm
Yeah.
like 15, like there's no tutorials at the time.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of doing that, I got into Premiere because that was, obviously like a better tool.
Mm-hmm.
And from Premiere, I got into After Effects because I wanted to do more effects work. And this was all still in high school. And then when it came time to college, I figured, like, I've been using these tools. Let's go to film school.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I have a 5-year head start on you. I'm 35. And so even though it is a 5-year gap, that time period, things were changing so quickly. in terms of like what computers were capable of, and being able to now suddenly shoot digital instead of on, mini DV, and then what was the one right after that? I can't remember, but it was still on tape. It was physical tape we were shooting on, and then digitizing. Like that whole process was kind of phasing out during that time period, and it was a time of like very new possibilities. So yeah, like you said, there are no tutorials out there then, so you kind of had to just brute force it and figure it out however you could.
Yeah. I was lucky that I had Andrew Kramer at the time.
Yeah.
Like when I was learning this stuff, once I started to like do a little more, I started diving into After Effects and searched After Effects tutorials, and what came up was Video Copilot.
Yep.
And I don't know how many people here today know about Video Copilot, Andrew Kramer. I'm sure a lot of people who are older and have been in the industry for a while like know all about that.
Yeah.
But some of the new generation motion designers might not know. And that's how a lot of people got their start, is watching those tutorials and learning. Like that was just a great way to get your feet wet with the program and understand how it's laid out, because there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, I get sad every time that I see a comment on Reddit or something about where should I learn After Effects, and somebody mentions the original Andrew Kramer Video Copilot Intro to After Effecks series, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't even know about this site." I was like, "What?" Like, there are kids getting into motion design and After Effects that don't know who Andrew Kramer is, and that's absolutely insane to me. But on the flip side, there are a lot more people teaching After Effects now, and you're one of them. I'm one of them. It's growing, and I think a lot of people are finding a good audience because so many more people are interested in it, and they're seeing that, people can do this on YouTube, and it's fun, and you can have success with it. So it's good.
Yeah. There's a whole new generation, and it seems like every few years there's a new like cadre of designers who are like putting themselves out there and establishing a new style.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was really like Video Copilot was like the first generation that I saw happening. And I guess before that was like broadcast.
Right.
Wasn't really a part of that. But for digital, it was like Video Copilot. And then School of Motion came along and sort of blasted the doors wide open, making education accessible and having these like pretty cheap but really robust courses.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have designers and studios like Ravi or Ravi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Ravi.
Yeah, but like they've established like a whole different style, and they're putting out tons of videos on Instagram and YouTube, and there's Discord servers where people are doing stuff. So it's a really exciting time to be a motion designer, even as things are rapidly changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back a little, get a little bit more about your history. So you got into motion design. What kind of places did you end up working? Were you straight into a studio, or were you freelancing right out of the gate? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so I went to college for film.
Mm-hmm.
And getting out of school, I graduated in 2015. And I figured, all right, cool, I'm done. Like I've done a lot of like After Effects work and effects work and like music video stuff when I was in college. But I still wanted to be an editor. So I was, applying to editor roles and like trying to take on freelance editing jobs. And I did that for a bit. But nothing was like super exciting about the work that I was doing. It was a lot of like just social media ads, like not anything I was really passionate about. And then the work that I was getting started to turn more and more into effects heavy After Effects animation work. Like, like you were saying, like in 2015 and the few years after, like motion design was really exploding. People were really wanting, more robust motion graphics in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself getting asked for that more and more. And so I just kept doing that work.
Cool. So I know eventually you ended up at Adobe. So like, what led to that? How did you get from starting out and into eventually working on the Adobe team?
Yeah, that was a really fun experience. So I was living in LA, and I had worked at like a few startups as like permalance situations. And, I had done some like music video work and worked for like a music startup and then a streaming startup way back in, I think, 2017, like before the current streaming landscape. Like these guys were trying to do the same thing. And so I worked for these companies, and then I started bouncing around to different advertising agencies in the LA area. And I went to visit some friends out in New York and saw that there was a lot of work in New York. And so I was like, hey, like I'm already doing this in LA. It's kind of working out. Let me try my hand in the city. So I moved across the country and started doing the same kind of work out there. And it took a little while to like pick up like the pace of things in New York. But honestly, like I hit the ground running and like got pretty lucky and started working at agencies as a freelancer pretty quick. And I think it's because my rate was so low at the time. Like I didn't know to charge higher. And so I came to New York and was charging a super low rate. And everyone was like, cool, like get him in, we'll try him out.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that for, I think, a year, maybe 2 years. I forget the timeline. And I was pretty happy with it. And I'd kind of hit my stride working on different like commercials and agency projects. And I saw this role pop up as a full-time role, just straight up on LinkedIn. And it said, Adobe Stock Mogrts team. And I was like, I know Mogrts. Like those things are awesome. Like I've used them for projects. They're interesting. Let me just apply and like see what the deal is. And I actually applied and I sent the hiring manager a message and I was like, hey, I just sent in an application for this. And I got a call back. Yeah. And so I went and met with the team and, I wasn't really intending on jumping in to work there. I was pretty happy freelancing, but I met the team and I was just really impressed with all the people working there at the time and thought, yeah, I want to work with these people.
That's awesome. Now, going into that role, did it have any kind of requirements in terms of like your coding knowledge? Were you familiar with expressions at that point, or like what exactly was your role on the Mogrts team?
Totally. So there were some requirements. You had to know After Effects well, and you had to know Mogrts. They were looking for people who were really experienced with Mogrts and After Effects, but there weren't that many people who were, at least not living in New York City and wanting to do this full-time job. And so I was one of those people who had enough experience. And at the time I thought that I like knew everything about them. And, now years later, it's one of those things where like, the more you learn, the more you know that you didn't know in the past.
Right.
And so I was experienced with expressions and I was experienced with Mogrts in the past, but then working there just took it to a whole new level.
Sure. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm curious to hear your experience on getting into expressions, but when I first did it, it was very much just Googling and finding old Creative Cloud forum posts and Dan Ebert's website and just kind of figuring things out as I went. Anytime that I saw a tutorial that used an expression, I was literally just copying it down because generally the person doing the video wasn't really teaching what that expression was doing. It was more just type this in and it will work. So I'm curious what your experience with expressions was at the beginning. Like do you remember what it was like the first time that you learned about them and how you got into, because now clearly you have really mastered them based on your tutorials. I've learned things from you that I had no idea were even possible. So how did you get from no knowledge to where you are now?
Totally. I started the same place everyone else started, and that was copying, pasting things from Dan Ebert's, from Creative Cow, and being like, oh, I need a wiggle, or I need like, a bounce. I need these different things, and let me just copy and paste them online and see if they work. And then if they didn't work, change some values, try to figure it out. And, I did that for years, and I thought that was like using expressions was like you copy and paste some snippets and like maybe change the frequency. And over time, I just kept through trial and error, like kept doing more complex things. And then it was, I guess, learning Mogrts that I had to really dive deeper into expressions and understand how they work. And again, it was just trial and error. Like you start by pick whipping some values, and then you pick whip them and you're like, wait, I need to change it. Let me like add 50 to this, or let me multiply it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh wait, now I need a conditional thing. So like diving into if else expressions and figuring out like, oh, I want to tie these things together, or, as this thing rotates, I want this thing to move, and just gradually doing more and more complex things. So you start by copying and pasting things online. Like that's a perfectly good way to start. And then over time, you just tie things together, do more advanced things, watch tutorials, and you'll pick it up.
Yeah. That's exactly how I learned it too. I think it's great now. There are resources like School of Motion has expression session. Media has an amazing expressions course. There's a channel, Animoplex on YouTube. Huge fan of that series. I learned a lot through those tutorials. But turning it back to you, I mean, there's one tutorial in particular where you were answering questions. I think it was the response video to your text box. It might have been the original text box. But what you did was you put the source directed time, width, height, top, and left values all into one variable. And I had never seen anybody do this before. So can you tell me where in the world you learned that, and why aren't other people using that technique? Like, I've never seen anyone else do it, and I feel like everyone should know about it.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's way easier to do it that way. So I guess there's two parts to that question. Why doesn't everyone do it this way? Because most people are copying and pasting things online, and a lot of the answers are old.
Yeah.
And so After Effects used to use the legacy extend script engine for expressions. And so this was, built into After Effects for years, and it had to work with expressions in a certain way, and you could only write a var to declare variables. And I think in 2018, somewhere around then, they introduced the JavaScript expressions engine. And that just blasted the doors wide open, because now you can do tons of native JavaScript methods inside After Effects. And these are things that you're not going to find just by searching within After Effects. These are things that if you go online, you have to search like how to do this thing in JavaScript, like arrays, JavaScript, objects, JavaScript. But it really opens up things that you can do with math and manipulating arrays. And so this method was something I was really excited about. And I don't remember the first time I learned it, but the first place I know it was documented was Zach Lovett's expression session, which is a fantastic course. I took this course in 2020 while I was at Adobe, actually. I was there and I was like, I want to take this course, upgrade my knowledge even more. And I already knew a good amount then, but that course was amazing. And the later part of the course is very advanced. And Zach's a fantastic teacher. And Noel, who's also a teacher in that course. They're both awesome. And so I remember at the end of that course, the very last video, Zach has this video where he starts talking. He says, hey, so like throughout this whole course, I teach you all these different things that you can do inside After Effects. But I taught you them in this really approachable way that works with the older engine. And what you can do now with the JavaScript engine is all of these new things. And he goes through a slew of them. And one of them is called object destructuring, which is exactly that method. Where you can say left, top, width, height all in one line, and then pull those properties out of the source directed time object. What's really cool about that is once I realized that you could do that, I was like, wait a second. This works for source directed time. What else does it work with? So I started looking it up online, like learning a little more about destructuring. And you can actually do this with arrays. So I do this all the time in After Effects. So instead of making two variables for your X and Y position and saying var X equals and pick whipping the X value and var Y equals and pick whipping the Y value, I'll just make one line and say var and then brackets 0 colon X comma 1 colon Y equals the position property. Now that was a lot to say, but basically that's array destructuring. And so what I'm doing in one line is I'm pulling out those two different properties from the array, assigning them to two values. And so it's doing a lot of things in one line. And once you understand how it works, I think it's actually a lot more readable. It's more concise, and it's a lot easier to edit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it, like I said, it blew my mind when I saw that, because I am used to just one line after another declaring more and more variables. And I mean, the fact that, source directed time, you pretty much need 4 different variables to access those 4 different properties. So when I saw you put it in those curly brackets, I was like, hold the phone. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to save so much time. It was so much
Yeah.
easier. Yeah.
It makes it so much easier. And yeah, and like I said, you can do that with other properties too.
Yeah.
It's called array destructuring. If
Yeah.
anyone's curious,
I'm gonna
just
that
look it up. The one caveat I'll add, just in case anyone's trying this, is if you're doing this with arrays and not source directed time, but like you pick whip a position property, at the end of the line, you're going to have to add dot value.
Okay.
Because to get the array, you actually have to get the value of the array. You can't get the property object.
Right.
And this gets into JavaScript things. It gets kind of confusing, but just add dot value.
Yep.
Yeah, and it'll work.
Great. Yeah, see, that's the kind of stuff that would have gone so far over my head. It's actually one of my favorite stories is my kind of my audition into teaching for School of Motion before I made Explainer Camp was Joey asking me to make a 2-part tutorial on expressions for the School of Motion YouTube. And I was like so excited. I was like, absolutely, I'll do that. And then I immediately was like, I need to learn expressions now. Because at that point, I was just copying and pasting. I didn't really understand what I was doing. And I kind of just scrambled to learn as much as I could, as quickly as I could. I recorded those tutorials probably 10 times before I was happy with the way that I taught it and where the end result was actually what it was supposed to be. But it was great because it forced me to really get an understanding, and I started to learn things like what you were just talking about, getting the value, not just the property object. And so, yeah, I mean, the stuff went over my head initially, but once you start understanding those basic concepts and how everything is structured and how you can start taking advantage of it, I love expressions now. And it's such a fun thing for me to be able to not have to be extremely creative with my design side and be much more technically creative and try and figure out how to make something work that I'm like, I know that this is possible. And I just have to figure out the code to make it actually work.
Yeah. I really love being able to build procedural workflows inside After Effects by tying things together with expressions. And after doing this a lot, you realize that sometimes it's worth coding and figuring out the expressions, and sometimes it's just worth doing manually.
Yeah.
If you have to do it one time, just animate it by hand, use some keyframes.
Yeah.
It'll look the same and it'll be way easier and faster.
Yeah.
But if you want to make a template that you can use in the future, then do it with expressions.
Right.
I think that the other thing that's really exciting about expressions is like once you start to play with them a little bit, you can start to just Google like how to do something in JavaScript.
Right.
And then apply that to your After Effects expressions.
Yes.
So like get the last value of an array in JavaScript. I wouldn't look that up on Creative Cow. I'd look that up in some JavaScript documentation.
Yeah.
And that'll be like a more efficient method.
But yeah, that is a really good point because there are some really fantastic resources. Like obviously JavaScript is used widely, like so much more than what After Effects motion designers are using it for. So that it's a very easy language, I think, to grasp in the grand scheme of things in coding languages. Okay, so I know I'm bouncing around a lot here, but let's rewind back to Adobe. So you were working on the Mogrts team, and I believe that was right around the time when media replacement was becoming a thing, right?
Yeah. So I was there from April 2019 to I think October 2020. I was there for a year and a half.
Okay. And our paths actually crossed then, which I didn't remember until you brought it up. I didn't know you at the time, but you were on a call. I was talking with the team at the time media replacement was becoming this thing, and I got invited by Adobe to make, I think, 5 templates for the launch of media replacement, which was really a fun experience for me. But didn't you get to make a few templates as well for that launch?
Yeah. So I was on a very specific team. I was on the Adobe Stock Mogrts team.
Right.
So like Adobe has like a Getty Images like stock site. They have their own version where they have templates and photos and videos and all that stuff. Adobe Stock's great. They have tons of high quality content. But so I was there and we had made a short list of artists that we thought would make great templates for this new feature. And so you were on that list and some other people were on that list. And I was just walking by in the office when one of my coworkers was on the call and she was like, "Hey, Nick, get over here. Like Jake's on the call." And I was like, "Oh, Jake, awesome. Like, let me hop on." And so I said hi and and that was about it. And I think I bounced off the call after that, but it was great to meet you then.
Yeah.
And, I've been aware of your work for years, and it was exciting to hire like a bunch of creators online for some templates that could then get put out for free
Right.
to users. A few months after I left, media replacement came out. And so I was actually invited to make some templates for that
Cool.
as well after I left.
Very cool. So you ended up leaving, and at that point, were you going straight back into freelancing? And is that when you went back to the West Coast?
No. So the timeline of me being there it was during COVID. And so my year-long contract was about to expire. And we started talking about like, should we switch to full-time? Should we extend the contract? Like, what should we do here? And that was right when COVID happened. So we ended up extending the contract for 6 months. And so I stayed on for another 6 months, and I got to do some of the most exciting projects while I was there. Work on some really cool features that ended up coming out, and test and provide feedback and do more of my primary job.
Yeah.
But then after that year and a half, I just felt like it was time to get back on the creative side. And, I felt like counterintuitively, I felt like I could have more of an impact from the outside rather than the inside.
Okay.
Adobe's a big company. It's very slow moving.
Yep.
And so, it was great to see how the sausage was made, but I wanted to get back on the outside to be able to contribute to the community, make some of my own tools, and make Mogrts for clients that were helpful for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I bet they were thrilled to have somebody who knew the ins and outs of how Mogrts worked. And that kind of, I'm assuming this is what led into you starting a YouTube channel, because some of your earliest tutorials are on Mogrts. So tell me that story. What made you want to start a YouTube channel, and what has kind of been your goal with that?
Yeah. So, I guess because I grew up on tutorial videos, right? Like that's how I learned how to do everything in After Effects. It was through watching tutorials and then trial and error and like actually working on things. And I always wanted to like make a channel and put some tutorials out there of things I was learning. But it takes a lot of time. And I didn't want to make a channel that was just like rehashing things that were already done or like changing them slightly. I figured like if I was going to put something out there, I wanted it to provide value and like have a focus. And so after focusing on just Mogrts and templates for a few years, I thought this is something where I can contribute. There's not a lot of like high quality tutorials out there on this topic. They're all kind of like drag a property into the EGP and hit export.
Right.
And so I thought that was somewhere where I could contribute. And so I decided to make the channel after leaving and try to put some educational videos out there.
Yeah, that's great. So that's how you got started. Did you have any plans beyond just making a couple of tutorials, like to contribute? Were you hoping that turned into something bigger, or did it lead to anything else?
Yeah, it's led to a lot of things. But no, the plan was really just to have a place to share like videos and tutorials, specifically on procedural workflows and Mogrts. The thing with making videos, as I'm sure you're aware, is it's hard. It's really time consuming.
Yeah.
And so what I've found over the past 3 years of putting out videos, I put out almost 20 videos over 3 years. So it's like not a ton, right? Like there are some people who make a video a week.
Right.
I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be doing that. But what I've found is that some of the videos that were the easiest and quickest to make are the most popular and the biggest hits. And so like one of the videos that I made in an afternoon is sitting at like 80,000 views, and people love that video. And then some of the other videos that I spent a week or 2 weeks like thinking about, researching, trying to design, trying to rig things up and like teach them in a digestible way. The people that watch them like them, but they don't really hit that big audience. So, so I think there's a balance between like how much effort and time I'm able to spend on a video versus like, is it worth it for the audience? Is it really new? Is it something that's going to like stick around and be useful for years to come?
Yeah. Cool. Well, I know I definitely appreciate it. I know firsthand that a lot of people appreciate your tutorials, even though, like you said, you're not that guy who's going to be posting every week. But honestly, I think that kind of content sometimes is far superior because you're not playing the YouTube game, which is kind of what has been my philosophy going into it. Obviously, I want to have YouTube success because the more success I have on it, the more time I can spend on it. And this is my passion. I enjoy making content that people can learn from and benefit from for free. But it, like, you, to your point of like, sometimes you make a video in an afternoon and you're like, well, it was a fun video, whatever, post it, and then it blows up, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to replicate that. Like, yeah, I'm glad that it's doing well, but there's, videos that I've put a month of work into, like my Shadowcaster preset. That was something that just got more and more complicated as I was making it. I was like, oh wait, what if I could do this? What if I could do this? And it was literally a month of time that I was producing that whole video. The actual recording of the tutorial wasn't that extensive, but just the amount of time that I put into getting the thing to where it needed to be, that's very different from I have a cool idea that I can record this morning and edit by this afternoon and post tomorrow morning, and then it does really well. Like, yeah, you never know.
Yeah. And I would love to be able to sit down and just like do a live screen recording and be like, I'm just going to work through this live and like put it up. But I don't want to have a 30-minute video of like working through something. And so I actually script all my videos. I like plan them out extensively because I want to make them as short as possible. So that way someone who's watching it and like Googling, how do I do this? Yeah, you can get the answer, and hopefully you learn something along the way. But I want you to be able to like take it and use it and not have to skip around as I figure things out.
Yeah, no, I love that approach. Because I have, like, even with some newer stuff like Rive, I'm learning Rive right now. I found a couple of like answers to questions, but they're in the middle of a 2-hour stream. And I'm just like, I just need to know how to do this thing. And like the video came up, the topic is kind of what I was asking, but I have to now like search for that point in time in a 2-hour video. So that is a very, very good on you for thinking of your viewers. That's a great attribute of your channel. So what about the scripts that you have? Like you have 3 or 4 scripts that are on AE scripts right now, right? How did those come about?
Yeah. So I didn't do any scripting until the past couple of years. And actually, I'll tell you how I got into scripting.
Yeah.
So I've been using expressions for years, and we sort of went through that earlier. The way I got into scripting was through Microsoft Visual Basic.
Okay.
And oh my God, this language is horrible. It's from 1991. It's older than I am. Such a pain in the butt. If you think people on Creative Cow are cranky, you should look at the old Microsoft forums. And the reason that I started to learn how to do this was at the Adobe job, we used a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of Microsoft Excel for tracking things. And I had to do a lot of manual Excel work. And I thought, I don't want to do manual Excel work. Let me automate my own job. And so I wrote a bunch of scripts in Microsoft Visual Basic to create macros and automations inside Excel to do a bunch of the tasks that I didn't want to do by hand every day. Ended up sharing those with the team. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still being used. And so I found out that like it just wasn't that hard to start doing it. Expressions in scripting are almost one-to-one. Like it's just different documentation, a different way to run it. But so I started doing that with the Excel thing, and I was like, wait a second, like, why don't I just do this for After Effects? And so while I was on the Adobe Stock team, there were also a lot of things in After Effects that I wanted to speed up processes for like QA, changing the naming of things. And there was always this sort of like runaround of like, sometimes they would have internal tools built, sometimes they'd hire external developers to build tools. But there was kind of like never enough talent to go around to build all the things that needed to get built. And being there, I was like, oh, I thought that like being here, we would just submit a ticket to a help desk and like someone would bang it out. And it was not like that at all. And so after leaving, I was like, let me just do this myself. I'm just going to look at the documentation. I'm just going to learn it. If I want to build it, let me just do it myself. Yeah. So as I started to play around with scripting, there's so much better documentation now than there was just a few years ago. I think that we're going through like an Adobe tools renaissance right now, where so many people are putting out new tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because the level of documentation and video tutorials out there have gotten way better. The guy who I've collaborated with on some of these other tools, Nate Lavelle, he's a super talented developer, and he has a YouTube channel going through all of these different scripting things that you can do in Illustrator, Premiere, After Effects. So when I was first learning, I was just watching his videos and being like, oh, this is not some sort of like dark art that only a few people are allowed to know. It's actually really approachable, and you can learn how to do this. And so I just started playing around with things and got them working over time.
After you got that grasp on scripting, and you know that kind of, you figured out that relationship was similar to expressions, what were the first couple of scripts that you made, and tell us about the ones that you have on AE Scripts?
Yeah, totally. So the first one I made was Find My AEP.
Yeah.
And so the way this one came about is it always bothered me how like I have a lot of files. I have like 5 hard drives, and I'm always saving things different places. And in a lot of tools, you can just hit like reveal file in Explorer. You can do this in Premiere. You can do this in VS Code. You can do this in so many pieces of software, and there's no built-in way to do it in After Effects. And some people are like, oh, just open up the save dialog and copy and paste that file path and then like open up a new thing. It's too many steps.
Yeah.
So I actually found there was an old tool on AE Scripts that did this. It was called Where's My AEP? And it's still up. And, you know, I saw this tool and I was like, oh, this seems to solve my problem. So I downloaded it and it was broken. It didn't work. Maybe it was just my machine, but I was like, dang it. Like,
Yeah.
this thing that I thought would solve my problem didn't solve my problem. Let me see if I can just do it with scripting. And I figured out that it was actually one line of code.
Oh, wow.
It came down to basically one line of code to reveal the file in the Explorer. And I was like, oh, this is not that hard. And so I looked at the script online. It looked like it hadn't been updated for 10 years, and I didn't know who the developer was. So I just reached out to AE Scripts and I was like, hey, I had trouble with this script. Here's the fix. You know, like, would you want to update that file or replace it? And he was like, yeah, submit it as a tool. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll package it and put it up there. And so I turned it into like a simple panel with a button,
Mm-hmm.
and I put it up as a free tool. And then I approached Nate and I was like, hey man, like I built this tool, but I think that it could be better. I want to turn it into a plugin, because scripts are fine and dandy, but you have to save the panel somewhere in your workspace, or you have to hit run, or you have to put it on a K-bar button. Like, this should just be a plugin. And he was into the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I shared the project with him as far as I had gotten it. And then he did the plugin development. So all of my projects are collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll often make like an MVP of the tool and then work with another developer to either polish it or bring it to the finish line. And so that one, like, Nate did all of the C++ coding for.
Yeah.
But what's great about it, if people don't know, plugins are integrated into After Effects. And so this tool, which was a script, is now just saved in the file menu.
Right.
So you can just go File, Open Project in Explorer. And what's great about that is it means you can link it to a keyboard shortcut using the native like keyboard shortcut editor.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about something taking up space in your workspace. It's just built in. It's like it was just updated.
That's that's like moving from expressions to scripting. It's like the next step, going from a script to a plugin. And that's actually something I learned a little bit about Blender with ChatGPT's help. But like being able to make something that is now part of the interface is just so much more powerful and easy to use. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so much more useful. And so after we did that one, after we did the plugin version, I was like, okay, this is way better. This is what it should have been all along. Let me actually make a promo video and like package it a little better and put it out. And then I had the fire and I was like, oh, I want to make more. This is great.
Yeah.
And so let's see, the next tool I worked on was Super Resize Me.
Yes.
And this is a fun one. And all the tools that I've built are like gaps in my own workflow that I was like, this should just be easy. Let me figure it out. This one was sort of inspired by the scale composition script that comes with After Effects. So for those of you that don't know, you can go to File, scripts, scale composition.jsx, and it'll open up a little panel. And then you can enter in, scale by 0.5, and it'll reduce the size of your comp by half, and it'll resize all the layers and everything inside of it. Super useful. Well, I tried this for projects, and I realized it was broken for 3D. It was broken for 3D cameras. I'm not sure if it's fixed at this point, but as soon as I tried to use it, I realized that, okay, it doesn't work for this, and also it's annoying to have to run on multiple comps.
Right.
Well, let me fix it. So same deal. I whipped up an MVP, brought it to Nate, and then we polished it and put it out as a product. And I wanted to match the same exact UI of the scale composition script, make it super easy for people to use.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it starts at like a top level comp, and then it finds all the child comps that are attached to it, and then scales them all by the same amount relative to each other. And this is really helpful. And sometimes you can get weird errors if you have like effects that it's not scaling or strokes, but a lot of the time I'll use it to scale just a single comp or scale everything in my comp. And it works for cameras, which is really, really important, especially as 3D is becoming more built in and expanded in After Effects. Like, we need these tools to work with 3D layers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to be super empowering when you are able to, see an issue, which, maybe the people at Adobe, maybe the After Effects developers, who I know some of them personally, are aware of some of these scripts not having all of the functionality that they should. But you worked for Adobe, I'm sure you're fully aware that changing anything about any Adobe app is a very long process, and there's a lot more to it than just, I'm going to change this script and let's just push it out to After Effects. So being the independent side of this now, the developer that you are, I'm sure that's super empowering to be able to just be like, I'm going to fix it. And you do it and it works and you can share it with people.
Yeah. And it's not always that easy, but
right.
But it's I really don't like having to do something manually every day.
Yeah.
That I feel like should just be automated. And so I'm willing to put the time in to figure out how can I make this easier on myself and save myself 5 seconds every day. That way I don't have to open up the Finder, figure out where this file was saved. I can just hit one button and it pulls it up for me. The other tools that I made, I think, are actually even better. So the next tool we worked on was called Set Path Keyframes. And so this one's really simple. And this was also like, I think, just a missing feature.
Mm-hmm.
So there's shortcuts in After Effects for, I call them the P-star shortcuts, for position, scale, opacity, anchor point, rotation. But for motion design, like, everything is vector and paths. And like, we've been doing this for years where like we need to import Illustrator files with Overlord and then animate shape paths. And then I always find myself toggling down all the different properties and being like, set a keyframe on the path, or multiple paths or multiple layers. And I was like, I just want this same shortcut for paths. And so we built that as Set Path Keyframes. And so all it does is it works exactly the same as those other shortcuts. You can tie it to any keyboard shortcut. Some people like Q, some people like I, L, whatever. And you can just hit one button and then it sets a keyframe on all of your path properties on your selected layers. Or if they already have the path properties, it'll remove them. So it works exactly the same. It's built into the animation menu. It's a plugin, and it's free.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, the path manipulation in After Effects, I feel like it needs an overhaul. And now that I'm moving past Adobe products a little bit, I've looked at Figma. I'm learning Rive right now, but I don't know how familiar you are with Rive, but if you keyframe a path, I mean, you can keyframe literally every vertex and every tangent handle and the rotation of that tangent and the length of that tangent. And it's just all there. It's all data that you have access to and you can just keyframe. And it's like, that is such a great way to be able to handle your paths. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my opinion is on the idea of going Adobe free. I don't think I'm there because After Effects still is the only app that can do a lot of what I do. But I'm really excited to see that there are these other companies that are trying to develop alternative solutions for aspects of After Effects and handling things in, I think, a much more efficient way than After Effects has for the last like 18 years at this point.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the new tools too. I haven't used a lot of them, so like I haven't used Rive, I haven't used Unreal. I played with Cavalry when it first came out. Yeah, Fable I played with. I was really excited for these tools, and they all accomplish parts of the workflow, and like they do provide value. But After Effects is a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
you can throw anything at it. You can throw footage, photos, vectors, and now 3D. And
right.
while I would love for some other tools to come along and be useful in the pipeline, like After Effects does so much. And so even with all of its like, little bugs and quirks, I still have to use it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all in the same boat there until something changes. So I'm curious, you've been releasing these tools for free, which is awesome. Like I commend you for that. But like, have you had any prospects of where you might take this? Are you looking to turn some of your scripting or tool developing into something that produces income for you and becomes something that is supplemental to your freelancing?
Yeah. So for freelance work, I make a lot of Mogrts. I've been making Mogrts and toolkits for years. I've made hundreds. So actually, after I left Adobe, I ended up working with this agency and doing tons of work for Netflix. And man, I don't know how I made 50 plus toolkits, like several hundred Mogrts for them for all their social media for 2 years. I made a lot. And, in other freelance work, I have to do one-off scripting all the time, like make a button that does this thing or just process 100 comps because we need to change the name of these layers or hide and shy things.
Yeah.
And so I do use these things day to day, and I'll often get brought in to rig things up with scripting or expressions. For the tools, I'm really happy to put them out for free, especially for things that are like smaller and things that just I feel like need a patch.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have one tool that I'm putting out that is finally a paid tool, and it's a paid tool because I've spent a lot of time developing it, and I think it'll be useful for people. So, hopefully people like it.
All right, well, let's dig into that. I'm interested now. What's this new tool you're working on?
So I've made all these tools for After Effects to try to make motion designers' lives easier and help my own workflow. But something that's become really popular in the past few years, I don't know if you ever scroll social media, you may have seen these animated captions that pop up on everything.
Yes.
So I've had to do a lot of this work in the past, like way back in like 2016, 2017, when I was working in LA, like we were doing these sort of animated captions. It's supposed to look like it's organic social media, but you're doing this work in After Effects and Premiere.
Right.
And this has become really popular the past couple of years. And there's so many tools that do this now, but none of them are well integrated with the editing workspace. And when I started on this project, I started on it in November of 2022. And so there was even less available then. Now there's some things that have come out to try to attack this workflow in different ways and be built into Premiere or After Effects. But I still think that they were all overcomplicating things or making it really hard to edit. And so I wanted to build a tool that gave motion designers and editors the ability to build their own animated captions, use them in Premiere, make it feel super fast, easy, fluid, and have you be able to build your own designs.
That's awesome. So I have very little experience with captioning tools, but I know that it is a huge demand for editors for a solution to be able to do them very easily, because like you said, it's extremely trendy right now to have social media posts with captions. I'm assuming because most of the time when people are scrolling, videos are auto playing muted so you can entice the viewer. But anyway, I personally have a friend who has made social media content for a client and has a subscription to one of the captioning services. But even that he's struggled with and has found issues with. So what it's about? Well, number one, what's it called? What's your tool called? But two, what makes it different from these other Because it does seem like there's a handful of them out there. What makes yours different from these other options?
Totally. So the tool is called Captioneer.
Okay.
And if you're watching this video, it's out. It's available now.
Okay. Link down in the description then.
Yeah. So the thing that makes it different is, I guess there's two big things that make it different. One is it's not using any AI anything. So we're not plugging into ChatGPT or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or whatever. We're not using those things on the back end to try to use those services to automate your workflow. This is like a fundamental Adobe scripting thing that works with Premiere natively. And the big difference is that I'm using Mogrts for these captions. And this is something that's been done a little bit before. And there's some other tools out there that have done this well. But the thing that I wanted to do was give people the ability to make their own Mogrts and use them. So it allows you to use the built-in text and transcript workflow that you already have access to in Premiere. You can transcribe your sequence in Premiere natively. Mm-hmm. And then you can just export a text file, import it into the Captioneer panel, pick a preset, hit export, and it'll add all of your Mogrts to your sequence, lining up one-to-one with your captions on the track. So it's really simple to see like, oh, this is one-to-one going to go from these orange captions to these Mogrts. And now you can edit them live. You can slide around the timing. You can edit the properties in the Essential Graphics panel. And I think that it's the easiest and most convenient way for editors to work in Premiere. The other big thing is by not tying into these like AI services like ChatGPT, those services charge you based on the usage. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these services that other tools are using, they have to pass on the cost to use the customer. So the more of the service that they use,
right,
the more they're charged. And so the more that you use, the more they have to charge you. So the greater the resolution you're using, or the more words you're transcribing, or if you're using other features like auto-suggesting chapters and like other things, they have to put up different paywalls and different credits for you to access these things. But I don't need any of those things. I just need some animated captions to be easier. So I wanted to make this tool that worked natively with all the Adobe tools. As After Effects or Premiere get upgraded, those upgrades are going to be available inside Captioneer. And Captioneer works natively with any Mogrt containing text. Any Mogrt that's built in After Effects containing text, you can use with the tool. And it's just going to input your caption text into that Mogrt and put it on the timeline.
That's a huge leap forward, I think, because I think customization is one of the biggest complaints I've heard about captioning tools. So in theory, what I'd be able to do is I could create a Jake in Motion brand looking my own fonts and colors Mogrt, transcribe one of my videos in Premiere the way I normally would if I was making closed captions or something, and then run that file through your tool, and it will apply it to the Mogrt that I custom made. And my new captions will be generated using that transcription and my template, my Mogrt.
Exactly.
That's incredible. I can't wait to try that out. Yeah, I think you've done something that no one else has even attempted, it seems like. Because like you said, everybody's using AI to kind of do it in the cloud and then bring it back down. So
yeah. So some of these tools, you actually have to like upload your file and then get put in a queue and wait for it to download. Some of them have features that happen locally, but the goal is to make it, not dependent on some third party, something that you can buy one time that you don't have to pay for credits. And something that you can use natively and something that you can pick up in an afternoon. Like you don't have to be a Mogrt wizard or some amazing motion designer. You can just create a comp in After Effects, export a Mogrt, and see this thing working immediately. There is one downside, and I think that everyone should try it if you're interested. But the one downside of this tool is it doesn't do per word timing.
Okay.
So the way that the captions work is it's based on like a segment of words. And so you'll have a sentence at the bottom of the screen. And so a lot of these other tools are, highlighting the word as it's passing through.
Right.
That's a cool feature, but it really complicates building a tool for this. Mm-hmm. And so there's other tools that have come out that have done a lot of post-processing to simulate like a word by word timing,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to tie into these AI tools.
Right.
I didn't want to do that because I wanted it to be really malleable and editable. And there's a lot of designs where you don't need that per word timing. So some of the presets that come with the Captioneer tool are like a typewriter that like types the words on screen, or a glitch that glitches the text on screen. And those aren't these per word animations. So you don't really need that for a lot of designs. And if you need to do that for specific segments, you can always do it manually. For the designs that have word by word animation, we just set a linear interpolation. So as the Mogrt goes from start to end, those words are going to pop on screen from start to end.
Yeah.
And it's not listening to your audio. It's just going 0 to 100%.
Right.
And using it a lot of time, that's close enough.
Yeah.
And if there's some sort of cadence that the speaker is using, where they're speaking slow and then really fast, and you want to manually edit it because this is some really important video, you can.
Okay. So that makes me think, since these are Mogrts, you have the ability, once the sequence is built, to select the Mogrt and change the text?
Oh yeah.
Right in Premiere.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome, man. Okay. I don't think the timing thing is that big of a deal. Back to my point of the majority of the use cases for these captions, I think, are for when people are watching videos on mute, or when it's auto playing and you're just trying to get them intrigued at the beginning. So I think that's a welcome trade-off for the amount of flexibility that you're enabling the editor to how quickly they're able to generate and then manipulate. I think that's the big thing that these other tools aren't allowing users to do, is manipulate after that's been generated.
Yeah, that's the thing that I found. When I tried to use these tools, I was like, hey, this is great. Like, it gives me a first pass. But
Right.
as an editor, I want to edit it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to refine this in the timeline. And like, if you're giving me PNGs, or if this is a dynamic link sequence, or if this is just giving me a video with captions burned in, I can't edit any of that.
Yeah.
And especially if I'm tied to your service on my phone, and then I have to send that file from my phone to my computer, becomes a whole mess. I wanted to give people the same ability to edit clips in the timeline with this tool. The other big thing that it opens up is by throwing out the per word timing, it makes it really easy and possible to build your own Mogrts.
Right.
Because we don't have to do any special post-processing or rig the Mogrts in some really complicated way to work exclusively with this tool. It means that you can just set a text animator and be like 0 to 100%, like slide my words on screen, export it, and then use it and immediately see it working.
That's awesome, man. That's really exciting. Like I said, I can't wait to check it out. I'll put the link down in the description, but what's the URL where we can go see Captioneer?
It's live at captioneer.tv.
Okay, cool. So everybody go to captioneer.tv to check this out. And you said there's a free trial that people can try this out themselves.
Yeah, there's a free trial. It's super accessible. There's a free trial button on the site. It'll bring you to the Lemon Squeezy storefront. You just enter your email. It'll send you the free trial. You don't have to enter your billing or anything like that. You don't have to like start a subscription. You can just download it. It's a 7-day free trial per device. So if you have a desktop and a laptop, you have 7 days on each. I want people to just try it. Send us your feedback. If you like it, then you can buy it.
Yeah.
You know, this project was a year in the making, and it was a collaboration with a lot of people. So I started this project in November of 2022. I did a V1 with Nate. And then I ended up doing a V2 with Alex White, who makes AE Viewer. Okay. Incredible developer. And so we ended up building this thing. And then I ended up taking it to some studios and agencies that I know, testing it in their pipelines extensively. Did a whole V3. And that V3 is the one that's public and the ones that you guys get access to. So it has like all the bugs fixed, all the cool features added. For the promo video, I worked with this amazing Brazilian studio called Criativos Studio. These two guys, Vinny and Murillo, great animators. They smashed this video. I'm really excited for everyone to see it. And I worked with a great VO artist named Chris Johnson. He did a great job. We did custom music from another Brazilian music artist. And the website was done by another designer named Nic Dean. He's a Polish designer. So, this project was like a big collaboration, an international collaboration, from me being based in New York and now California. to people in Brazil, Ukraine, Poland, all over. And so this was a project that we all came and worked on together. And I'm really proud of what everyone contributed to. So I'm excited for people to try it.
That's awesome. I love that you're able to turn something like a tool into a much bigger project. I learned that too with my course that I launched last year, that there's when you're doing something yourself and you're releasing a tool or a course or whatever it is, there's a lot more to it than just making the content and uploading it. I had to make promotional materials. I had to make a website, all this new stuff. So the fact that you're able to collaborate with so many other talented artists, that's so cool. And I'm glad that you've been able to, resource so many talented individuals to be able to make this one cool thing.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to work with other people. And I just want to make sure that everyone gets the credit. I think that's one of the things that's lacking in the creative industry. After working in this for 10 years, it's crazy, but like we work on all these creative projects. Some of them never come out, or they come out and then you never get the appropriate credit. So, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows this was a team effort and these people smashed this project.
Well, Nic, that's awesome. I'm so excited to see Captioneer and how it does. Make sure everybody watching, you go check this out. I really think it is a kind of a game changer for how you can handle captions inside of editing, inside of Premiere specifically. So check it out. Congratulations on the launch. I wish you the best with that. And again, thank you so much for being on our channel and for getting to hear more of your story and get to know you more as a person. And everybody go subscribe to Mograph Mindset. You're not going to regret it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. It was fun doing the show.
Well, I hope you enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about Nic Dean. Definitely go subscribe to Mograph Mindset if you haven't already, and support Nic through Captioneer. If you need to make closed captions on top of social media posts or any other kinds of videos, definitely give it a try. Obviously, there's a 7-day free trial, but I think that you'll appreciate the pricing model that he has set up for both subscriptions or just purchasing it outright. So go check out Captioneer, let him know what you think of it, and let me know what you think about this style of interview. If there's anyone else that you think that would be interesting to talk to on my channel, definitely leave a comment down below and I'll consider reaching out to them. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic day and I'll see you in the next video.
It was fun.